Continuing volume. Okay. So, excuse me. That was my review. See ya. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So by now, I think we know that I'm going to tackle the prequel trilogy, which a lot of people either. I mean, I'm sure these movies have their fans, but this trilogy is nowhere near as beloved as the original Star Wars trilogy. And the first rumblings for episode one started with night with Lucas starting a draft in 94, 95, somewhere in there. And this movie was really hyped when it came out. I mean, okay, look, when this movie came out, I was four. I did not know what Star Wars was. I was more interested in Thomas the Tank Engine and Arthur cartoons at the time. So I really didn't notice much at that point. I remember seeing trailers for Inspector Gadget that year. That's about it. But so this movie, a lot of people were expecting it to be this amazing, triumphant return for writer director George Lucas. Instead, what we got was a movie that was nowhere near as good as the other Star Wars films. And there's a lot of reasons why this film didn't work. For one thing, the main plot about these good guys fighting Asian stereotype aliens. There's a lot of racial stereotypical accents in this movie. You got the aliens that are supposed to be a mockery of people with an Asian accent. Jar Jar, which we are going to get to in more detail, the goofy Jamaican voice, and Watto, whose voice was probably modeled after some seedy Middle Eastern voice that Lucas decided to poke fun at. Um, the problem is this Trade Federation is trying to force this planet known as Naboo to sign this treaty, which we don't know why this treaty is bad. We don't know what's at stake if it gets signed. All we know is the Trade Federation wants it so bad they're starting to kill people and they're invading the planet. So yeah, it's up to our heroes Qui Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson, and a young Obi Wan, played by Ewan McGregor, to try and get some sort of sympathy to help fight this. Yeah, in the first movie, we were in the original trilogy, we really didn't need to know the Empire's politics, but we got enough information to get the idea that they're evil. You know, that's what we got the gist of it. But here we just know these guys are evil because we're told they are, and they look sinister anyways. So there really isn't a whole lot of. I mean, with the Empire, they found subtle, nondescriptive ways for it to make sense, but here there's no real threat or any real interest in these villains' motivations. And Lucas has many of his actors. Okay, the story is hard for kids to follow because they don't explain the political stuff in a way kids would understand. But it's too childish for adults to find a lot of value in it, you know. And a lot of that does range on the poor explanations for everything. The fact that Jar Jar Binks may be funny to kindergartners, but that's about it. And a lot of the acting and the writing in this movie, the writing is weird. It's listening to some of the dialogue in this movie, it's like listening to one of those nerds at school. Funny I should say that. But it's like listening to a nerd and you're the jock and they say something so sophisticated and so eloquent, you're kind of looking at them like, what the hell are you saying? You're using fancy words, but you're not making any sense. Um, and the acting's pretty bland. I mean, there were some weird acting line reads in the original movie from '77, but they were really good actors that Lucas had for those roles. And in the other Star Wars movies, there were directors that knew how to direct actors. And here, Lucas decided to have most of his performers talk in this very emotionless kind of voice. We're talking kind of like they do in the Matrix, although in the Matrix the characters have a little more personality. And yeah, this was also the main point of this prequel trilogy was to showcase how Anakin became Darth Vader to set up the original trilogy, which again, this is not a bad idea. The idea of stretching it out into three movies, that's not a bad idea. The problem is Anakin was played by Jake Lloyd, and I'm not gonna attack this guy too much because we do know he has mental health issues. He's been in and out of the psych ward repeatedly. He got bullied into oblivion. But I will say this: in all fairness, his acting was pretty bad. But then again, I think the fact that he's not a good child actor. I mean, okay, he's like 8 or 9. What do you expect? And also, you got a director who's openly stated he doesn't know how to direct people in the past. So, yeah, you're kind of setting yourself up for a major train wreck when you got a child actor who's not that good and a director who doesn't really know how to wheedle out a decent performance. I think they would have been better suited if they got a different young actor to make this work. Like, I mean, I know they tried to get Haley Joel Osment, but he was busy with Sixth Sense. I mean, they could have gotten uh Elijah Wood. That was the name. Yeah, I mean, they could have tried it, or they could have found some other way to do it. So, I would say if you want to blame Jake Lloyd for his performance, I mean, there's only so much you can attack him for because I mean he was in Jingle All the Way a few years earlier, and again he wasn't good, but he was better than this. So I think it's just a case of him needing to go back to the drawing board and learn a little more. But it's actually really sad that Jake Lloyd and Ahmed Best got harassed and bullied into severe depression over this movie, which again both Jar Jar Binks played by Best and Anakin, they're really bad. They're not great characters. The acting is pretty bad. But again, I would blame Lucas more than the actors. They're just doing what they're told, and they're being told what to do by a director who isn't that great at being an extrovert. And I understand they made Anakin younger so we'd have more sympathy for him when he had to leave his mom behind. My problem is he's way too smart and calm for a 9-year old in the situations he gets into. He's very calm and controlled during the pod race, which I don't know how you would do that. He somehow manages to learn how to fly a spaceship he's never seen before. At least with the pod race, he built it, so he kind of knows what he's doing. But he learns how to use one of the fighter ships on Naboo later in the movie, and he accidentally somehow manages to save the day because they're trying to mirror Episode 4. Yeah, I think if they made Anakin 15 or 16 years old, I would probably believe some of his intelligence more than him as a 9-year old. It just seems a little unrealistic. Um, I think another thing I could say about the movie that is a little praiseworthy is that even though Darth Maul is just there to get killed off by the end of the movie, he looked intimidating. It's kind of sad they didn't give him enough time to showcase how more of a badass he was. The final lightsaber fight was a lot of fun to watch. It's actually the best part of the movie next to the pod race. Um, the CGI effects, some of them still hold up, but other parts like the battle scenes between the Gungans and the droids. Those look. Some of the shots there look good. Some of the effects don't hold up as well. It's kind of. I would say it's more like a 55% of the time the effects look wonderful, and then the remaining 45% of the time they look like they haven't aged well. Um, Yeah, I'm not really sure what else I can say except for the fact that this was probably it's one of those movies where at the time it was very hyped up and much beloved, but I think as the decades have gone by, people have kind of woken up a little more and kind of see that this film isn't exactly as nice as it was initially thought. Um, Again, I this is probably the worst of the Star Wars movies, but there's still two more films left of a trilogy, and I haven't seen these movies in a long time. So maybe Maybe Attack of the Clones will prove me wrong, and which is worse, but we'll see. Overall, not a great reintroduction to Star Wars, but it had its moments. That's all I have to say for this week. My Springsteen tribute to the river will be starting on Monday, and until then, I'll do what I do and remember to rock it for you Monday. See ya.